currently sitting on the AEW commentator's desk as one of the most engaging voices in the whole damn game. The Human Suplex Machine has been doing his thing in the business for 3 decades at this point. But while we know how brilliant he is today when calling the action alongside Tony Schiavone and Excalibur, just how good was Taz in the time before becoming an all-elite legend? Well, I think that's an intriguing question and one that deserves its own damn video. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here is exactly how good was Taz. All Elite Wrestling have established an audience that have remained incredibly plugged into the product since its 2019 launch. It is a dream situation for an organisation that realistically shouldn't have existed had WWE not blown their near 2-decade monopoly. A stabilised total viewership finds Dynamite most Wednesdays. Enough of that also makes an appointment with Collision and Rampage. And similar numbers can be found across the likes of X, YouTube, and Reddit engaging with the action in their own time. This is even true of commercial breaks thanks to the company's coverage on Triller, formerly known as Fight, where literally every second of Dynamite is now available to view should the TBS commercials feel as though they're an imposition on the match in question. Especially if Taz is in the mood to be his best damn self. An unexpected and undisputed highlight of the shows on commentary, as he also was as the top boss of the sorely missed Team Taz between 2020 and 2022. The Human Suplex Machine regularly has his best moments ripped and shared online, forcing repeat viewings and inadvertently generating interest in whatever he's particularly enjoying. It's earnest, uninhibited, and typically bloody funny, to be honest. This is extended to his excellent and fearless social media game too, as well as the joyous deification of his son Hook from that same deeply entrenched audience. Hell, Punk Fears Hook was a meme so successful that AEW cameras used to zoom in on signs that fronted it in the building. Now that's not to say that Taz is a meme because he'd rip your head off for inferring it and break your arms and legs just for thinking it. But he fits into 2024 wrestling in much the same way because he's yet again found a way to remain relevant. That's been an unexpected and unlikely pattern in his remarkable career. He may not have appeared the most obvious choice to call WrestleManias as he drowned in WWE's political waters, nor put forth the persona of the funniest man in the industry when he was a subhuman maniac with no boots and a painted face. But a young Peter Senersha was actually leaving ads in wrestling magazines looking for more people to shoot the crap about it with. AEW era him is fittingly elite tier Taz. An awesome broadcaster that can still scare folk witless with threats, even if they are going to be carried out by other people, who also knows his way around some hilarious patter with his colleagues as long as they stay on his good side. That's definitely the important part right there. But at various times across multiple companies, there were questions asked if bookers and bosses were really getting the best out of the Human Suplex Machine. At times, he was a man with evidently so much to offer that powerful people seemingly didn't know how to get the best out of. Paul Heyman, however, was the very first. The first time Taz picked a headset over a head drop was in ECW. Nursing a broken neck after a 1995 match against Dean Malenko and Too Cold Scorpio, the company's monster in waiting used a brief stint in the booth as a way to broaden his horizons in a business known for awarding the multi-skilled. Exhibiting the perfect blend of quiet menace and shrewd analysis, the move was vital in ensuring he'd never again go full caveman as the Tasmaniac. That's a gimmick right there. He'd only worked 5 matches in his updated shooter role before the knock, but the move to boots and trunks was made permanent by the virtue of him absolutely not effing around when he returned. Taz's November to Remember 1995 heel turn was the stuff of legend when it occurred. Now the Red Hook native was a bastard, but he typically unleashed his bad mood on the bad guys. No longer though, this Human Suplex Machine was in the pocket of loathed heel referee Bill Alfonso, and on a collision course with one of the company's poster boys. To paraphrase a bastardized chant, this actually was awesome. Taz vs Sabu was almost 2 years in the making and brilliant in its blinding simplicity. Taz had linked up with Alfonso in an act of fury towards ECW management, fans, and especially Sabu. Former partners, the Human Suplex Machine was left high and dry by the suicidal, homicidal, genocidal maniac earlier that year when he took a New Japan Pro Wrestling date overworking a planned triangle tag team match. Paul Heyman fired and buried him on the show he missed, but then brought him back as a returning hero later that year. And understandably, Taz felt spurned by all of this, but making literal his path of rage ultimately provided Extreme Championship Wrestling with a headline attraction worthy of the pay-per-view they were chasing. Between November 1995 and March 1997's Barely Legal, Taz battered his opponents and called out Sabu without reply. At the same time, ECW running a Raven Tommy Dreamer storyline revolving around them wrestling constantly provided equal foundation foundation in the exact opposite fashion. And against the backdrop of WWE's new generation and pre-NWO WCW, there was suddenly no hotter promotion on the planet than the furnace operating out of Philadelphia. And before we get any further, I want to know right now in the comment section down below, who is your favourite ECW wrestler of all time? Was it Taz or was it somebody else? You let me know in the comment section down below. A story that started with a shocking turn ended in one too. At Barely Legal, Alfonso hatched a plan with Sabu and Rob Van Dam to double-cross Taz. And this was another tactical masterstroke from Paul Heyman, having seen how popular he'd become during a years-long chase. He became a talismanic figure for the remainder of his run too, until a rampaging World Wrestling Federation came a-calling in 1999. Taz's WWE debut has been the subject of much conversation in the last few years, and mostly because of the Human Suplex Machine story of how it did him more harm than good. What still plays to fans as an electrifying greatest hits package at the expense of poor Kurt Angle's bones was in fact a bit too good. Earning one of the biggest pops of the period, his Royal Rumble 2000 arrival theoretically should have propelled him into the stratosphere, right as the company was reaching a commercial and critical apex. Instead though, it doomed him to a life on the losing end of every big match he ever had. The scale of the reaction scared the hell out of some of Taz's new colleagues, who made no secret of their disinterest in selling much for a guy half a foot shorter than them. Screw all of them, I say, under 6-footers for life. So 4 months after Madison Square Garden exploded for him, Triple H was pinning him on SmackDown. And then only the fools of the hardcore division were taking his suplexes at WrestleMania. Smartly realizing his fate, however, Taz used a feud with Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross to return to a former stomping ground. Tolerating Vince McMahon's inner ear screaming, he seamlessly flitted between part-time wrestler and commentator roles, until mounting injuries moved him next to Michael Cole permanently in 2002, and his second life in wrestling had begun. Now look, the less said about his time in TNA, the better. Though assessing the good and the bad is sort of the point here, so we have to. Seemingly trapped in a constant struggle to give a damn about a product that didn't seem to give a damn about itself, he was often better in a heel managerial role alongside Samoa Joe and later Aces and Eights than he was at the desk. What did stick out though was just how much authority his voice now brought to a wrestling show. Any wrestling show, even one with energy and stakes as low as mid-2010s Impact. Yet again, mastering the stuff that just cannot be taught, Taz now boasted gravitas as his chief trait. After departing in 2015, right around the time TNA/Impact almost entirely fell out of the regular wrestling conversation forever, he was gone from mainstream televised wrestling almost entirely, until seamlessly fitting into AEW as an announcer and eventually leader of Team Taz starting in late 2019. Now a voice of the company, he's actually as embedded as any of the originals that helped form the company. It's definitely been an overachievement of a run, but only in terms of how crowded the marketplace was when he arrived. Not because his resume didn't speak for itself, I mean look at that thing. But how does a run robbed of some prime in-ring years stack up against some of the greats? Now Taz's career is one of the trickier to scrutinize, but a deeper dive reveals a tenure that belongs in every single wrestling hall of fame out there. In ECW, he was so immensely believable that he drove the desire, need, and eventual execution of a major stage pro wrestling pay-per-view. He was ahead of his time in spotting the value of blending the aesthetics and athletics of mixed martial arts into his act. Now everybody's doing it. He was malleable at every single age, twice realizing the value of diversifying into the announce booth for a just-in-case plan that eventually manifested as a second life. And in spite of all of this, the gimmick hasn't ever lost its sheen either. I mean, Taz of 2024 looks more likely to effing kill you than the Human Suplex Machine WWE book so half-heartedly 2 decades earlier. It is madness. Like all the greats, he was at his best when he assumed a level of control over how he was presented. And it is no coincidence that he found success everywhere but the one place where that was largely impossible for a time. Equally, it's little shock that the freedom of expression in AEW has suited him just fine too. It absolutely should be highlighted that this piece has covered a 30-year run. I'm not even 30 yet. In an industry as fickle as pro wrestling, that number right there trumps any figures focused on title reigns and win-loss records. For a guy that so often didn't want to let people survive, he's actually mastered the art of managing it himself. The Human Suplex Machine absolutely rules, and if you disagree, well, you can tell him yourself. Your funeral. Have you enjoyed this How Good Was Taz wrestling video? Well, if you have, then go and check out this other one right here. It's got all the What Culture gang, and we're talking about the wrestling moments that set our souls on fire. Oh, it's a good time. You can thank me later.